Good evening. I am your host, David Prince, and this is Boylston. We have with us this evening Fenton Bean, a resident of Boylston, Massachusetts. Now, the primary focus of tonight's documentary is Fenton's involvement in World War II. Fenton Bean was a tail gunner in a B-17, the Flying Fortress. In 1943, he was shot down over Bremen and spent the remainder of the war in a prisoner of war camp, Stalag 17. In April of 1945, he was part of a forced march to the city of Braunau, the birthplace of Adolf Hitler. And there, he was liberated by Victor Delmore, a lieutenant colonel in Patton's Third Army. Good evening, Fenton. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your upbringing, your parents, and your sisters and brothers.
I am the son of Horace and Christopher Bean. I was born in Franklin, New Hampshire, 28th of July, 1921. My parents then lived in Tilton till I was 7. Then we moved to Bristol, New Hampshire, which was up the road probably 10, 12 miles. And my parents had 5 children. My sister Pauline, my brother Keith, my brother Albert, and my brother Wilfred. They're all alive today except my mother and dad. We were brought up in the Bristol school system, which was typical country as far as I can see. We didn't have too many hands-on subjects that we could do, like mechanics or anything like that. The only thing that I tried to use my fingers on was a typewriter, and it didn't work. So I graduated. My sister went on to be a telegraph operator, and she retired from there. My brother Albert still is, to a degree, a mechanic, automobile mechanic, very good one. My brother Keith, he's a jack of all trades. Right now he hasn't even retired yet. He's a truck driver. My brother Albert, my brother Wilfred, is outside of Atlanta, Georgia. He retired from the government, as far as national cemeteries and that stuff goes. Had a good job there.
Could you tell me a little bit about the relationship that you had with your parents?
I don't know. My dad and I had personalities that clashed. I was the oldest. My dad worked all kinds of hours. He was a truck driver. He'd be gone before we get up, and we wouldn't get home till after we'd gone to bed. So the only time we saw him was Saturdays, Sundays. He was quite strict with me anyway, trying to keep the rest of them in line, which I didn't care for that job.
Now, you grew up in the Depression. Could you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in that period of time?
Well, during 1936 to 1939, it was pretty hard up in New Hampshire. I'm not quite sure when the Depression started, but 36 comes in mind the best. We never had any money as far as nickels and quarters went, unless we'd take a milk bottle off of somebody's front step and trade it in for a nickel and get a candy bar down at the store or something. I don't think it was stealing. That was just recycling. And I think I had one Sunday go to a meeting outfit. And we all wore dungarees, except my sister, of course. Even she wore long underwear because it was cold up there. I used to get a kick out of it. She'd be trying to fix the stockings so they wouldn't see the creases of the underwear on the legs that were exposed. We used to walk back and forth to school, which was a mile and a half. Walk to school, walk home, have dinner, walk back to school, and then walk home from school afterwards. I don't remember it being tough during the Depression. It was kind of hard to find a new pair of shoes and that stuff, but we always managed. The barter system was used quite a bit. Dad was in the selling wood business, and the grocer would want a cart of wood, so we'd give him a cart of wood and take some groceries. And the barber would want a cart of wood, and the poor boys would get down and get a haircut. And Mom, Pauline did their own hair. I don't know where Dad got his haircut. He had a lot of friends.
Now, you talked a little bit about your father and the relationship that you had with him. Might you go into a little bit more depth on that discussion?
I had a lot of respect for him, probably as far as hours he worked. He was quite strict with me. I was 16 when I got I learned to drive truck and things on the farm. We had a small farm, it wasn't very big. We had 2-3 head of cattle and pigs and chickens and stuff like that. We used to have potato patches and beans, and somebody would raise corn, and some guys would raise different things and swap off all the time. The only thing I hated about the gardens was picking potato bugs. Put a little kerosene in the can and go around picking potatoes. So I can remember my brothers and I doing that.
I'm interested to know a little bit about your wife, Barbara.
And I graduated from high school in 1940. And Dad wanted me to work for him, driving truck. And it didn't work out, that's all. So I got in my car and came down to visit my aunt. Of course, we had visited before. She lived right up there in Boylston, Mrs. Violet Felch. And I came down to visit her and stayed. I met Barbara shortly after that, because I wasn't there very long. I got down here in 41, and I went into service in 42. So I met in front of Aunt Vi's house. She and Fay Garfield and Donald Garfield and Vernon Garfield was sliding. That was when we had an awful lot of traffic. Slide down Felch's Hill. That's how I met Barbara. She lived over in the Hastings farm. That's where the country club is now. And that big barn where the tractors and things are, that's where the cattle were.
Now, in past discussions, you talked about trying to enlist. and the fact that they wouldn't accept you. You thought you would sit out the war. Could you tell me what it was like when you received your draft notice?
I went to Fort Devens, took all my tests and everything. They come in one morning about 5 o'clock, I guess, 6 o'clock. Told us to get going, have your breakfast, you headed for Atlantic City. And we asked where we were going. Of course, they said they couldn't tell us. We didn't find out until we was on our way that we was drafted into the Air Force. So I left Barbara home, and I left everybody else at home. And I was at Atlantic City for 7 days. 7 days of drill with a broomstick. And then I signed up for the gunnery school in Fort Myers, Florida. And I ended up down there. Sent Barbara some money, and she came down to visit. I was down there 9 weeks and made buck sergeant. And then they needed armor gunners, which is a guy that takes care of the bomb site and know how to load bombs and how to take care of the machine guns and all that good stuff. And that was in Denver, Colorado. So after Florida, Barbara came home. Sent her a letter and asked if she wanted to come out and get married. Let me know, and I sent her the money, and we did. February 2nd, 1943.
Could you talk a little bit about being sent to England?
First, we were issued jungle packs and mosquito nettings and everything else, and we were going to go to the Pacific. So all the hustle, bustle, and everything else, and even the trucks had lined up to take us. There was an order come through to hold everything, so nobody knew what the heck that was all about. So a couple of days later, they decided that they were going to send us to England, meet the Air Force. So from Walla Walla, Washington, we went to Grand Island, Nebraska, left Barbara and all the rest of the wives in Walla Walla, Washington. Before we left, we got transportation for them to get back home anyway. After we got to Grand Island, Nebraska, my radio operator on the new crew was Mac McLaughlin from Kentucky. And the rest of it, there was, of course, it was five of us. The pilots, of course, stayed in a different place. We stayed in Liston, of course. And we was going from Grand Island, Nebraska to Bangor, Maine to take off to go to England. This was in latter part of September, the first part of October of 43. And when we left Grand Island, Nebraska, we tried to make it to Maine. It was all fogged in and freezing and all that stuff. For some reason, it was cold in hell that time. And we landed at Chicopee in Massachusetts at Westover Air Force Base. So this is where Mac really comes in. Most, except for the two guys from Kentucky and the bombardier from New York, we were all right here in New England, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. So he committed, he went in the hospital. He had sinus trouble, terrible. And we got 3 days at home. So when the train, Barbara's train came through Chicopee, I tried to flag it down. I did get on the train. And I was paging her. And the only thing I didn't go in was the dining car, and she was in there having breakfast. So I missed her then. So anyhow, I made it home to Boylston. My folks came down from New Hampshire. We had a little reunion, and then all of a sudden we heading for Bangor, Maine again. We made it this time. We flew from Bangor, Maine to Labrador. I don't remember whether we landed at Iceland or not. We had a crew. We had quite a crew. I think it was seven ships in the crew or something. I mean, in the group. And we landed in Greenland. That was a cold place. And then from Greenland, we went down to Scotland.
I'd like to know a little bit about a bomb run. What was a typical day like on a B-17?
Well, a typical day for a bomber crew is that you, when we were stationed in England, we were stationed in Quonset huts. And I'm sure a lot of people know what they are. Those are those corrugated buildings that look like a big, huge culvert cut in half with a front door and a back door on it. So that was our living quarters. And we were assigned to the 390th Bomb Group, 570th Bomb Squadron with a PO number, APO number from New York, so they wouldn't quite know where we were. And we had the flags out in the area, and if we were going on a mission, it would be red, and if we had a hole, it would be they didn't know really what we were going to do, would be orange or yellow. And then blue. Blue meant that you could sleep in. So they get us up early in the morning for breakfast. You try to eat because the missions lasted anywhere from 10 to 12 hours, sometimes 16 hours. And if you eat at 5 o'clock in the morning, you want to have a pretty good breakfast. So after breakfast, we'd go to briefing, and they'd show you where the target was. They had a big briefing room with a big sheet over the target and all that, and then they'd take it down, and everybody would say, where the hell is this place, or something like that. We didn't know geography worth a damn. We did know Europe, we knew Germany and that stuff, but as far as the cities and things, we didn't have pinpointed too well. After briefing, during briefing, they tell you what to expect, German fighters and Me-109s and the Fokker 190 were the most popular ones. I don't think they had any. They had Ju-88s, but those are bomber type thing. Of course, they could shoot at you too. And we'd go to briefing, and then we'd go down and put our guns clean our guns, and the bombs were all loaded, and the gas was all in, and then we'd put our guns in with all the ammunition. And then we'd get in. The usual squadron was 21 ships. So usually we put up 21. First raid we went on, it was, of course, scary. We got in the airplane. Of course, everybody's nervous as hell, even the pilot. I'm concerned about the whole thing. And we'd circle around, until we got our altitude. Say we were going in at 23,000 feet. And that's the altitude that you maintain, because the other squadrons from different airfields around England would be at another altitude. I can't remember how many aircraft there was except my own squadron. And we'd go out over the North Sea, and then we'd practice shooting our guns, make sure they worked. And then we'd be sitting there kind of out on cloud nine, wondering what the hell was going to happen. And then the pilot would come over the radio. He says, "Well, we're heading over the coast. Get ready." Well, it could be the coast of France, or it could be the Netherlands, or it could be up towards Norway, wherever the target was. And then all of a sudden, hell breaks loose. Flak starts coming up, which I don't know whether everybody knows what flak is, but flak is anti-aircraft shells. And they get up to a certain height and they burst. Of course, they throw shrapnel all over the place. Our biggest damage was done by shrapnel. And the German fighters used to like to attack from the front, because the B-17 was more vulnerable from the front than it was the rear. I guess that's why I was a tail gunner. They didn't dare come in too much, along with the rest of them.
How did it feel?
You don't really know what to say about the feeling of it, because you're scared to death, yet you're trying to do what you're supposed to do. One of the favorite things, one of the sayings was, when you were doing your training, you don't shoot a 50-gallon machine gun, only about 10 rounds. Oh, when them German fighters are out there, you just sit there and pull the trigger. I know I went through 720 rounds in very short order. One mission. I had a hell of a time getting my guns out, because the barrels heat up and bend. Needless to say, I needed new ones when I got back.
What was the bombing pattern during a raid on Germany?
The way they dropped bombs in those days, I still think they do it too, even now. You have a lead bombardier, and he's the one that drops his bombs, and you drop off of him. And it's like a blanket. 21 ship, lead bombardier drops his, and all the rest of them go. Yeah. We got factories, and we got cornfields, and we got canals, railroad crossings, and every other crazy thing. As far as accurate bombing, it was pretty good saturation bomb, because some would miss and some would hit, so actually you did what you were supposed to do. After you dropped your bombs, you figured, well, let's go home. So we used to get partway across the channel and start taking your guns apart, and that's when the Germans jumped us once, caught us without our guns, and so needless to say, after that, we never took our guns out till we got back to the base. It's needless to say that it was nerve-wracking enough. That's why you're 20, 21, 22, 23. Seems that you can take that stuff easier.
Could you tell me a little bit about your crew aboard the B-17?
We had 5 enlisted men, 5 officers. We had a tail gunner, 2 waist gunners, radio operator, ball turret gunner, top turret gunner, and the 2 officers in the nose were navigator and co-pilot, bombardier, I mean. The pilot and the co-pilot didn't have a chance to shoot back. The rest of us did. The old B-17, which was our aircraft, was named the Stock Club. The bombardier was a friend of the fellow that owned, I did remember his name too for a long time, now I forgot what it was, owned a Stock Club in New York. So we named our ship after that. The bombardier liked his snobs.
You were on your return from a bombing raid. What was the feeling amongst the crew?
The only good thing about coming back was before you had to go give the hot news to the briefing people, tell you what you saw and what you didn't see and how many fighters and if you got any and all that stuff. I don't remember if it was raid on, no, I don't think it was Bremen, but anyway. That's the first time they used German rockets on there. Try to shoot us down. They had these Ju-88 set out there with rockets under the wings. And we had a group that was flying just a little bit above us. Well, a little bit, quite a ways above us. Then we had another group down below us with B-24s. And I happened to be looking out of the window. And somebody up front says, uh-oh, here comes one of those damn rockets, I guess, or something. There's a big flash in front of this aircraft. And then all of a sudden the B-24 is gone. It just, I don't know how the hell it was so accurate, but they got one of them anyway. Of course, when you get back to base, you have to go to briefing. You tell all this stuff so that people know, the command will know what they have to expect and all that stuff. One good thing about coming back from a mission, Paul, is that you got a chance to go up and have a couple of shots of good old Seagram 7 or whatever. Medicinal purposes. And it was. But boy, you had to unwind as you were cranked up high, and I've been cranked up on medicines and things, but boy, that mission, those missions really cranks you up good. It's funny because most of us guys, we didn't seem to be too concerned about being, well, of course you were concerned about being killed. You said your prayers, and the good Lord was riding with you most of the time. And he was riding with me even when you had to bail out. But it's kind of scary.
Now, in 1943, December 20th, you were shot down over Bremen. Could you describe in detail that experience?
So the third raid on Bremen, we were all lined up on the tarmac, ready to take off. And the fuel had started down. And when my pilot got ready to do his duty, he revved it up pretty good, and my whole back end was covered with water. And it freezes. It's warm enough from the engines and things to melt on the wings and things. It wasn't that much water. It was like frost. But there was still water. And then it would come back and it coated my rear window and all that stuff. So I jumped out my escape door there and my big towel and wiped it off. And he started to pull away. And I said to myself, "Oh, the hell with it, go ahead." And I'm standing there watching it go. It's not going very fast, but I'm watching it. I said to myself, "What the hell are you doing?" So I run like heck and got in. So after we got in there, we circled up around. We did our bomb run all right. And I got interrogation after we bailed out. I told the interrogator wanted to know if we hit the target, and I told him, "You're goddamn right we hit it. We blew it all to hell." He didn't like that too well, but anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. After we dropped our bombs, all hell broke loose. We got hit by shrapnel. You know, those damn 109s out there, they started coming in and they were shooting at us. Number 1 and 4 engine went out. The bombardier and the co-pilot got shot across the knees. And the pilot is talking on her intercom. And our part of the airplane was silenced. Our intercom got hit and we didn't know what the heck was going on. So the radio operator came back and says that they were going to ditch it in the Zuyder Zee, which is an inland sea in the I'm pretty sure it's in Holland or in the Netherlands there anyway. And that way there, they figured they'd be rescued easier than trying to ditch it or landing on a field or something.
Now, 3 other crew members had jumped. You and Mac, the radio operator, were the only 2 left. The rest of the crew was to remain aboard the ship. What made you decide to jump?
Mac came back, and I'm not even going to go. I did make my way to the waste escape door there. And I'm laying there. I got wounded in the head and shoulder. And I didn't want to go anywhere. So finally Mac said, "Well, we better get out of here." So we did. I bailed out first because Mac told me afterwards, after we got in prison camp, that he wanted to make sure I got out too. Because I told him I wasn't going to go, and he's afraid I wouldn't. So anyhow, I bailed out, pulled the ripcord, and see where I was going to hit, and I was on the ground. Mac didn't bail out. Well, Mac bailed out as soon as I went, I suppose, but the airplane went quite a ways. Mac was quite a ways away from me. I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself because I'm in a foreign country sitting on my hind end in the middle of a field. And the fighters leave and the the old flying fortress ass straightens right up and starts to gain altitude, and I said, son of a gun. There she goes. And she did. They were going, like I told you, they were going to try to ditch it from the side of Z. And they kept going, and they made it back to England. They landed at an airfield that was under construction. They had to dodge 2-3 bulldozers and graders and every other thing. But they did it. So 5 ended up back home in England, and 5 of them made it from the war in Germany.
Now, once you had located Mac, you realized you were on the ground, behind enemy lines. What happened next?
Mac and I were loose for about 20 minutes. And this young girl, I don't think she was over 10 years old, came running over to both of us. And she spoke to us in English. And she says to us, they want to know if we were Americans. And I couldn't figure out why she would say America if we were in America. But she spoke perfect English. She noticed that I was bleeding quite bad around my head and things. And she says, you need a doctor. So she took off across the field to get one. And then this other lady came. I gave her my parachute. She tucked it up in under a dress and took off with that. I never know whether she made it or not, but of course they were made out of silk. And that would make some nice silk underwear, I suppose. Short time later, this Gestapo guy, I think, showed up with his entourage. And a pistol, and Mac and I, of course, didn't have any. And then this Volkswagen came pulling up. Put me in the back of the Volkswagen with the escape door and 3 other parachutes, Coxey's, I imagine, and Harris's and Max. Might have had mine too, because I don't know whether the woman got away with it or not. Took us to the airfield. And they took me, Mac had to walk. Mac didn't catch up with me till we were in Amsterdam civilian jail. And they took me to the airfield there, and they took me in the dispensary, checked my head and all that stuff. And I complained about my shoulder, and they understood. They could speak English just as well as I did, probably better. Being from New Hampshire, my twang was probably a lot different than theirs. And they had me undressed because they wanted to see my ankle. I sprained it when I bailed out. And you have skate pictures that can be put on a passport or something. So if you get a chance to meet the underground, the French underground, or whatever, you might be able to get passports to get out of there. I don't know where you're going to go. You've got an ocean. Well, you get the ocean one way, then you're not going to go towards the east, because that's even farther. And going west, you got the North Sea. Anyhow, they found the pictures, and they had a hullabaloo over that, and I was sitting there waiting for them to do something. And there's a German pistol sitting on the desk, and a pack of American cigarettes. I forget what they were. I think they were Chesterfield. And every once in a while I'd take a Chesterfield and stick it in my pocket. I didn't touch the pistol. I don't know what he expected me to do with it anyway. probably try to escape. I had no place to go, nowhere. I didn't even know where I was, to be honest with you. And I don't know, they did my head, they bandaged my head, and eventually, and then they took me to the, I don't know how far out of Amsterdam we were at that particular time, but they took me in off, I went to civilian jail there. And there was all the rest of the guys, my guys, and there was, I don't know, 25 or 30 others, all in the civilian jail. This was December 20th, 1943. December the 20th, it would be 50 years ago. Doesn't seem possible. But it is. And we spent Christmas there. And I'm pretty sure we spent New Year's. Well, it doesn't matter anyhow. We were there in jail. And we weren't treated too bad there. And then they transported us to the train station. They're going to take us, you're going to go to Cologne first. And of course, what pulls up in front of the city jail is a Marley truck. Like George Stowe's truck. 31 Ford. It had a wood burning furnace on the side of it. The wood was treated with some chemical that made gas, and the old Marley run off of that. And old Marley would run off of alcohol or kerosene or any other thing here in the States too, because that was done. Then we had a merry ride to the train station. Of course, the civilians and all that, they were all excited who we were and everything else. There was some walking wounded, and there was none on stretchers or anything, so that was good. They kept them in the hospital there till they got straightened out. We missed the first train. They had a roll call check to find out how many of us were still there. Being American GIs, crazy in hell, didn't care whether we got shot or not. Some of them was to sit down, they'd miss us, and there'd be 5 less. This happened down in Stalag 17 later on too, but anyhow. And then they'd count us again, there'd be 5 too many. The Germans, for some reason, could only count by 5. They didn't have a sound off and all that good stuff. And then after we got on the train, we had pretty good transportation. They didn't put us in cattle cars or anything like that. Which they probably could have. They transported enough people in those damn things. And there was another guy besides me that was wounded. So they had us do the kitchen stuff, like, and they'd stop, and then we'd go in and get coffee or hot water or something to eat in the stations that we stopped at. And it was strange because they took I don't know how many places we stopped, but anyhow, every place we went in, I forget his name. He'd go in and sit right down with the German soldiers and the civilians and everything else. And have ersatz coffee, which is far as I'm concerned, maple leaf coffee. And the potato soup that they had in those places, that was a good staple. And we'd sit right there and eat with them. And then the train, I don't know whether the guard had a girlfriend out in the kitchen or where, but he'd come out and roust us out of there. We tried to carry the stuff back to the car. I forget how many was in there. There wasn't too many in there. Maybe 23. So then we were on the road again. So from Cologne we went to Frankfurt on the Main. And that's where the interrogation started. They wanted to know what outfit you were in and how many missions you've been on, the airfields and the training schools you were in the States, and all that good stuff. So you try to not give them too much information that they could use, right? And then after it's all over, and we're all back home in the States, they knew anyway, but that's all right.
After being picked up by the Germans, you were brought to a hospital, patched up, and then brought to interrogation. Can you still remember your interrogator?
The interrogator that interrogated me down in Frankfurt graduated from University of Ohio. And he could talk just as good English as I did. And I probably said it before. I'll probably say it again before I'm done. But he's got to notice that he got a letter from the parties that he was reporting back to Germany, so he had to go. His mother and father were still there. His relatives were still there. So that's how he ended up doing what he was doing. They, as far as myself personally was concerned, I didn't get mistreated in interrogations. Because I gave them just what I felt I had to give them, that was it. And I wasn't wise or smart or any other thing. The only wise remark I had said to him was, I asked him where he got his education. He said, Ohio. And I told him he better keep his ass out of there. And when I got home, I'd go get him. Fat chance for that. But anyhow, that's what I said.
After the interrogation, where did you go to next?
They had us in solitary confinement there because they didn't want us to talk with the other guys, I suppose. And my wounds hadn't healed at all. So they come in and one morning they said, well, you're off again. So we went through the same old stuff, getting on the trains and getting transportation and all that stuff. And we headed for Krems, Austria. Of course, we had no idea what was down there, but I forget how many days it took us to get there, not too many. We ended up at Krems.
Stalag 17. Could you describe a typical day in the prisoner of war camp?
You got to realize that the facilities in Germany or in any of those countries over there, even in 1943 and 44 and 45, the Americans were way ahead of Europe as far as sanitation and all that stuff. I'm not saying that the hospitals and things weren't that. They were good. But the prison camps, the barracks were nothing like the United States. We had one central heating thing in the thing. It was just what they call those soapstone stoves. You can buy them today, but they, of course, they're not as efficient as they were then. I mean, they're more efficient now than they were then. 320 prisoners in one end of the barrack. Then you had the washroom and the so-called showers and things in the middle, and then you had 320 in the back. You can say north and south or east or west, whichever you want. Our barracks, our compound and things said north and south. After we got in there, signed to where we were supposed to go, the typical morning was they'd bring in hot water, buckets, and that was your breakfast. If you had coffee, fine. We had Red Cross parcels, and we had coffee and some milk, some fruit and stuff, like raisins or prunes or apricots.
After breakfast, how did the day progress?
After we had our breakfast so-called, they'd come in and we'd all have to go out for roll call. No matter whether it was summer, fall, winter, spring, we went. And we'd all go outside. We had a German Air Force officer that was a colonel. I forget his name now, but it doesn't matter. I'm sure I got it in my memoir somewhere. And he'd give us the international salute, and we'd all salute him, and that would be the start of the roll call. If it was nice and warm, we felt like raising hell, five of us were running down the other end, it'd be probably too many. Once they go down there, 10, 15 guys would run back the other way, and they'd start all over again. When they got down to the end, it'd be 15 shot. But on a cold day, we stood right there and let them count us. We had the buddy system to keep warm while we were first there. Well, when we were there all the time, by that long. We spent 3 winters there, 43. Not much, well, part of 43. 44 and 45. Stalag 17B. Dinner, we used to, they had these big wooden buckets. I'm sure people, the older people remember the wooden bucket with a handle between the two, slide through the thing, and they deliver it in front. And our bunks were right near the washroom. So we used to yell worms in the soup, which was a dirty trick, because some of the people couldn't eat worms. And officer, doctor that we had said protein's good for you. So the guys that had the stomach had protein. And we had everything. We had dog meat, we had horse meat. They take the corned beef out of our Red Cross parcels when we got corned beef, and they'd mix it up with potatoes and corned beef. We'd have corned beef hash. No eggs. And no ketchup. And the damn concoctions that the guys would try to come up with to change our diet, which wasn't any good anyway. Well, we didn't. The German bread was that big, old, tough stuff. Like that kept us going for a long time. When we first went down, we could buy one of them for a nice big one, 3-4 pounds, for 3-4 cigarettes. And when we left, you get a half a slice of a quarter of a loaf for 10 pack of cigarettes. Americans did it to them every time, to themselves. Inflation. Supper wasn't much. You scrape around and get what you could. We usually, whatever was in season is what you ate. Like in the spring, we had whatever the spring vegetables were. I remember spinach soup, cabbage soup, and a little horse meat in it. We never knew what it was, whether it was horse meat or dog meat or whatever. The only thing that made it easy for us to eat was the German guys, the poor guys, had to eat it too.
Could you talk in a little bit more depth about the buddy system?
Oh yeah, well, the compound, the room that we made a room out of it. We had bunks. They made out of plywood and all that stuff, and we had mattress filled with straw or wood shavings and everything, which wasn't very comfortable. So we made little bunks out of them if we could, and then we spread them around so it divided it off. So we had a chimney right near there, and we could throw cardboard or whatever we could get our hands on into that and make a little heat, and that conserved the heat in that little corner. Coxie and I were buddies. When it was cold in hell, we slept together. When it was hot in hell, we slept together. And you never really undressed to go to bed. Because if it was an air raid, you don't know whether you could find your pants or not. We used to try to put our shoes down in the bottom, so all we had to do was swing out and put our feet in it. But it didn't always work that way either. The guy on the top bunk would take yours, and you'd end up with one or two. Foxy and I were buddies, bunk buddies what? Even after we got liberated, we slept in the same. Slept together and then woods. He was a rebel from Elliottsville, Kentucky. Got along great. Last I knew, he's still around. I don't know, usually you can keep in touch somehow, one way or the other. You hear from somebody, tells you what's happening. As of 2 years ago, we were all alive but one. Harvey Graver had passed away. And the rest of us, as far as I know, are still living today. He'd be, 72, 75, somewhere in there.
Can you remember any other activities that took place within the POW camp? Something to help people visualize what it was like being there.
After supper, in the summertime, we used to leave the windows open most all the time anyway, when it was warm enough. And this one evening, Coxie and I had been raising a little bit of hell, and after they have a curfew. So after curfew, you can't go outside. The only place you can go outside is go to the latrine. And then you have Then you have to get permission to go and all that stuff. So usually it was a pretty good parade every once in a while going to the latrine. So I'm sitting in the window and just relaxing, wondering when the hell we're going home and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, that goddamn German shepherd, he bit me right in the hip. I still got the scars. Thank God he wasn't. It didn't turn out to be too bad. I had a little sore for a while, but straightened out. Needless to say, we didn't sit in the windows after that. But that dog never bit anybody again either. Next time he come through, they brought him into the barracks for some reason. He made it down to our corner and he met a leg of a stool. And he made it to the latrine. And they never found him. You put a little lime on it and it disintegrates pretty fast. That's one of the side stories. That's a crazy thing that happened, but that's the way it happened. Another thing that we used to do to pass the time away, we had bridge tournaments. A bunch of GIs in prison camp playing bridge, which was interesting. Then another interesting thing, we had hillbilly music and bands. We had a theater. I don't know if Shakespeare was ever performed or not, but anyhow. Then we used to have races. You'd try like hell to catch a mouse, and then you'd raise it so it'd be halfway decent in size. And then you'd try to train it to race. And then you'd bet cigarettes to who was going to win and everything. Well, I got mine up to halfway decent size, and the cat caught him. So my entry in the race never made it. We were crazy, honest to God. The bridge tournaments were very interesting, though. Keeps your mind occupied. And the Salvation Army and the Red Cross and all those do-gooders, they try to do what they can do. But the biggest thing that got us all charged up was when they sent us a bunch of hockey sticks. What the hell do you do with hockey sticks in prison camp? So that was one of the goof-ups. Anyhow. The Germans, one of the guys that we had, he was a big guy. He was Max Schmeling's sparring partner. And I'm sure the old-timers know who Max Schmeling was. He was a heavyweight boxer. And his sparring partner loved boxing. So we set it up so we could have boxing in the prison camp. It was all right when we had a little meat on it, but when we all got to be featherweights, it was kind of rough. I boxed one bout. And the guy that got me was come to find out, was a Golden Glove champ, California. Needless to say, I was flat on the canvas. I stayed there. I never boxed again. Crazy things that we did. It was great, though. Now, of course, the sad parts were the people flipping their mind and all that, and that was awful. And if I didn't have my trading and running around and visiting here and there and everywhere, I couldn't sit on the bunk and stay there like some did.
Weren't there any escape attempts? Any chance of getting out of Germany alive?
And, well, one of our things other than trying to steal wood and get stuff for the stupid fires was digging tunnels. We had engineers, we had sand hogs that worked on the tunnel there in New York. And they were the engineers. have, we used to get cans of liver paste, which is a sandwich meat. And we used to make blowers out of them to put in the tunnel to pump in air. Our barracks was, barracks 40 was right near the fence, morning there and everything. And that was the shortest route, so that's the one we started on. We used to, well, when we started the tunnel, we had this big cauldron in the washroom. That's the only place we had hot water. And once in a while we'd get cold enough Germans would give us coal or something enough to heat it up so we could have a halfway decent bath anyway. So that's where we put the entrance to the tunnel. Once we got the sand, we used to put it in a bag type thing that we had in our legs of our pants. We'd walk around the compound and let it out on the ground to get rid of the sand, because we didn't dare wash it down the washroom because they could see it. The trenches, sanitation was all outside. So if we let it down into the water, it would show. So anyhow, we got that done. I don't know, it took us quite a while. After we got it done, we decided, well, let's try it. So we sewed our inside our jackets and all that stuff, candy bars and cigarettes, whatever we thought we could take with us to buy our way out of Austria. I don't know what made us think we could never do it. We never had anybody stay out there yet. But we had a sergeant, German sergeant. He was in charge of communications type thing. That's what he was in the German Air Force. And he was the one that alerted us not to do it. Next morning we wake up and get out and look, and there they all set up out there waiting for us to go. Thank God, that was a relief in one way. We didn't do it because I don't know how many, whether they let too many through before they started shooting or what. So that was all up in the air.
Now Barbara must have been awfully worried. You, an MIA, until she was finally informed that you were being held in Stalag 17. What was communication like with her? How difficult was it to get a letter sent to the United States?
Well, the communications between the United States and any foreign country during the war took a long time to do it. And I don't know. We could send one card a week. But the good heavens, it would take so long to get them delivered that you didn't know what the hell was going on. Well, I got some letters around with the dates on them. I can't remember how long it was before that. It wasn't too long before Barbara knew that I was missing in action because the International Red Cross had broadcasted over the amateur radio network. And then I still got the telegram somewhere. It tells how long it was before she knew. And I got one of the 17 months I was in prison camp. I got one Red Cross parcel. I had my daughter's booty in it. She was born November 19th, 43. And I had the booty. I had some Sir Walter Raleigh pipe tobacco. I had a K. Woody pipe, which I still have. I don't know how I kept that.
What was Barbara's role during World War II while you were in Germany?
After she got home from 1943, then when she got home from the West Coast, because she had Lucille in November. And after she got straightened out, she worked for the International Red Cross here in Worcester. And she kept up on a lot of different things about the war effort and everything.
Now, in April of 1945, you took part in a forced march to Braunau, the birthplace of Adolf Hitler.
The Germans decided that, seeing the Russians were coming towards us, our camp, they were coming across the eastern part of Austria pretty good. So they decided that they'd march the able-bodied men, so-called, towards American lines.
How many days did that march include?
I forget how many days we were on. We were on the road quite a while. We marched about 100 kilometers. And through all kinds of weather. The officer that we had in charge of our outfit was made sure that we stayed in farmhouses and things. So you slept in with the hay and you slept in with the cattle. I even milked a couple of cows for milk, which is crazy. And that was something else. We had 4 guys that couldn't make it, but they didn't. They picked them up and sent them to the hospital or got them transportation somehow. We never did see any ambulances or anything, so I don't know. They must have went by horse and wagon. And after the whole march, they put us out there in the woods. All they had was a perimeter cut, cleared it. They had slit trenches for toilets with a log across, so if you had to go, you set over the log or whatever. And we had no shelter whatsoever. We stripped the bark off of the trees as much as we could. I never saw so many knives and things show up. I had a good one. And we strip the back off of that and make a shelter of some kind. It was soaking wet. The Germans didn't even have that kind of shelter. They were just packed out there. I forget how many days we were there. Oh, we went down bathing in the Inns River in the middle of April, freezing cold, but anyway, we did it.
What were the living conditions like during the march? And did you have any extraordinary experiences?
The officer in charge of us put us in this farmhouse. And we thought it was in the middle of the afternoon and he stopped us from marching. And evidently he knew somebody down the road or something, he took off. Well, anyways, the guys were kind of lackadaisical. They were doing their laundry, we were doing our laundry. So I decided that maybe this would be a good chance to see if we could find I could find something to eat. So I took quite a few cigarettes, little bars of soap and chocolate bars. They were D bars, still chocolate. And I snuck out, and I made it out quite a ways. And walking along, I said, well, where the hell are all the farmhouses? I couldn't find one. So then all of a sudden the motorcycles coming down the highway. Well, road, it was much of a highway, but it was a German officer. He was the Wehrmacht, which would be like the National Guard in the United States. And he stopped. And I could speak halfway decent German, so I fed him a cigarette. And we were talking, and I fed him another cigarette. So finally I gave him 2-3 cigarettes and told him I had to be going. And he says, he started up his motorcycle and beat his aim, and off he went. And he never did anything to me. So then I did make it to a couple of farmhouses. I traded my soap and my stuff for bread, and they made the best homemade jam that I ever had. Of course, that was where the grapes and all those good vegetables, all those good berries were down in there. And they did it just like our parents used to do it. Have pantries full of that stuff. So I had my little knapsack that I made, and I went back pretty well loaded. Coxie and I and 3-4 others ate pretty good that night. Some of the guys, they were, I don't know, they didn't have the nerve that I had, or maybe I had lack of nerve, whatever. But I didn't do too bad doing that.
Now, in Braunau, you were rescued by Victor Delmore, Lieutenant Colonel in Patton's Third Army. How did that feel? Tell me about that experience.
And then this one morning, it's all kind of quiet, and thank God the sun was out for a change. And we were trying to dry out our blankets and everything. And then a hell of a roar went up. God, we couldn't figure out what the hell that was. So we all ran out to see what the hell was going on. Lieutenant Weaver and 2 GIs came walking up through the thing. So as we went out and ran out to greet him, and the only thing that I remember him saying, Jesus, you bastards stink. I don't know why. Our uniforms were covered with a half-inch of dirt, I suppose. And come to find out, they were from the Third Army. I think it was pretty sure it was the Third Army. Victor's got it all down in a way. Victor Delmar was in charge of the outfit. He heard that there was 4,200 GIs up there. That's how come Lieutenant Weaver and his boys were there. Took us a couple of days to get us all organized, a day or so to get us organized. I went to town I went to a bakery shop. I think the name was Ranshopping was the name of this town. And all the civilians that had weapons, they were all piled out in the street. The tanks were there. The tanks were way ahead of the infantry anyway. And I went in the rest into the bakery. So they put me up for the night, and they washed my clothes and they dried them out. And I said, in the morning, I said, well, I got to get going here. So I said goodbye to them, went back, and they were marching down the road towards a big aluminum factory that Victor got for it.
Is there anything that you would like to add to this documentary? Something to help people understand.
Well, the thing of it is, one of the things that has made it easier for me and for the rest of us guys that went in after Pearl Harbor. We were at war, and they had attacked us. So we never questioned about going in the service. And when they drafted us, we never questioned that. And when they put us in the Air Force, we never questioned that. Of course, a lot of them didn't get put in the Air Force. A lot of them were drafted in the Navy, in the Navy too. I don't know if the Navy drafted or not, but a lot of them were signed to the Navy. A lot of them were signed to the regular Army. And a lot of us, like me, I was fortunate because I enjoyed flying. Even during the war, I enjoyed flying. I enjoy flying now if I could, but I can't. And being young, if some officer told you to do something, it didn't have to be a high officer either. It could be if you were a little old buck private and a sergeant told you. You did what he told you to. You didn't argue too much.